Figure 5.9 through 5.11, Gradebook using the switch statement to count letter grades. We're going to revisit the gradebook case study in this example, and our goal is basically just to introduce to you the switch multiple selection statement in C++, but we've decided to do that in the context of the gradebook case study, where we're going to have the user input an arbitrary number of letter grades, and then we're going to display a grade report. And for that purpose, we've gone ahead and changed the gradebook class to include the two methods input grades and display grade report. And you'll also notice that we've added some additional data members to the class, integers called a count, b count, c count, d count, and f count, where we will count up the number of A's, B's, C's, D's, and F grades respectively. So let's go ahead and run this program for a moment, then we'll come back and take a look at the main program and the implementation of the new features. So as we pull it up on the screen here, we get our welcome message displayed first. Then we ask the user to enter the letter grades or enter the end of file character, EOF, to end input. Now, that does not mean type EOF. The end of file character is a key sequence that informs the program that no more input is coming. It's similar to when you're reading out of a file and you reach the end of the file, some sort of indication is provided to the program that there's no more data in the file. Now, on Windows, you can enter the end of file key sequence by typing Control-Z. On most other platforms, you can do it by typing Control-D on a blank line. So let's go ahead and test out this program, and I'm going to go ahead and enter some letter grades, and we'll do a couple of each letter. And I'm also going to type an invalid letter as well, just so that you can see what happens when I do it. It prints out incorrect letter grade entered, enter a new grade. Now, at this point, I'm going to type Control-Z since I've got some A's, B's, C's, D's, and F's. So let's do Control-Z, and when I press enter in Windows, that submits the end of file key sequence to the program, at which point the program summarizes the number of A's, B's, C's, D's, and F's that we received. And of course, it did not count the H as anything. You can see that we had two F's, and we have two F's there, three D's, 2 C's, etc., etc. So let's go ahead and take a look at the implementation in this program. First, we'll go look at main, where you can see some more of this kind of straight line code that we've talked about. We first create the gradebook, give it an initial string for the course name. We tell it to display its welcome message by calling display message. We tell the gradebook object to input the grades, so we're going to go get the grades from the user, and then we tell the gradebook, once that's done, to display a grade report. Let's take a look at the implementation of this example. A couple of things have changed here. In the constructor, we are now not just setting the course name, but also initializing the variables, the counter variables to 0, where we'll be storing the counts of the different letter grades. The set course name and get course name member functions have not changed. The display message member function has not changed. And we have our input grades member function next. Now, this is where we introduce the switch statement. The switch statement in C++ is only capable of working with integers and integer-based types, or so-called integral types. So that would mean the data type int, the data type long, which is typically twice the size as an int. However, that does depend on the individual platform. Short is another type, and then there's unsigned versions of each of those. We can also use char, which is what we're using in this case. These are char literal values in single quotes. But we cannot, for example, use strings in double quotes in the C switch statement, which is inherited from the C language, and which has the same restrictions in the C language as well. So in this example, we're going to tell the user to enter the letter grades and the end of file character to end input, and here is how we are implementing the condition in our while loop. We have an assignment expression and a comparison in the same condition. First, in the first set of parentheses here, we have the assignment expression that says assign to the variable grade the result of calling cin.get. Now, cin is our standard input object, and its get member function returns one character from the user input. So what we're doing is taking that one character, assigning it to grade, and as long as that character is not the end of file character, then we're going to process the body of the loop. Now, again, EOF is not an actual character with the letters E, O, and F in it. It is a representation of the fact that we've hit the end of the input stream. And EOF is a symbolic constant that's predefined in the C++ header files, and in particular in the IOStream header file, and you can use it in your program to test for the case where you reach the end of a stream, whether it be the standard input stream or a file, or possibly even a stream coming over a network connection as well. So as long as the character that the user typed is not the end of file key sequence, we are going to start executing our switch statement. And as far as the syntax of the switch statement goes, it starts with the keyword switch and is always followed by a set of parentheses containing the so-called controlling expression for the switch. And that expression can be a single variable name that has an integral data type, or it can be some sort of calculation that produces an integral data type, or a function call that returns an integral data type. Any of those would be valid. And what's going to happen is it's going to take the value of this expression and start comparing it to the case labels that are listed inside the curly braces of the switch's body. And by the way, for the switch statement, the curly braces are required, whereas for all of the other control statements in C++, curly braces are required only if you have more than one statement in their body. So here we have two case labels, one that contains the single quote capital A, single quote character literal, and that represents a capital A. And we're also allowing the user in this program to type lowercase a to represent a letter grade as well. So we're testing explicitly for a capital A and for a lowercase a. Now, these case labels are labels because they end with colons, and each individual value that you wish to test for has to be separately listed in a case label expression. And when you want to do the same things for more than one case, you just list out all the different cases and then follow those cases with the appropriate set of statements to execute. Now, in this case, if in fact the grade that was entered is either a capital or a lowercase a, we will add one to the a counter variable. Then we will execute a break statement, which is going to terminate the switch statement's body by jumping from line 68 to line 99, which would then allow us to proceed with the next line of code after the switch statement, if there were one. In this case, we hit the end of the while loop and go back to the top of the loop. Continuing, we have cases for capital B and lowercase b, capital C and lowercase c, capital D and lowercase d, and capital F and lowercase f. And in each of these, what's going to happen is when we compare the controlling expression to the case labels, we're going to keep moving down through the switch statement until we find a match. Or if no matches are found, we will execute the default case, which says in this case to display an error message, incorrect letter grade entered, enter new grade. And this break statement at line 98 is optional because we're already at the end of the switch statement. However, a lot of programmers like to include that break statement for symmetry with the other cases. And again, regardless of whether we have it or not in this example, because the default case is at the end of the switch statement, when we finish executing the statement in the body of the default case, we would reach the end of the switch and then move on to the next statement in sequence. Now, you'll notice at lines 90 through 93 that we have some cases for the new line escape sequence, the tab escape sequence, and a space character as well. Now, let's go ahead and run this program again. And you notice that what I did originally is I typed in letter grades, and every time I typed a letter grade, I hit enter to submit that grade, if you will, to the program. Well, it turns out that the sequence of grades that's in the input stream, because of what I was typing, is the a capital A followed by a new line character. The new line escape sequence, it does not actually appear on the screen. It just moves you to the next line, and that's what you get when you press the enter key. So each of these characters is followed with a new line character as I press enter to submit the value to the program. And the new line character will also be read by cin.get. So we need to have a case that throws away, if you will, the white space characters. I could also type a grade and hit the tab character, and type another grade and hit a couple spaces and type another grade. And when I hit enter, and let's do Control Z to finish up here, you can see that I had 2 A's, we have 2 B's, we have 2 C's, and those are all getting counted properly, and then we had a D and an F as well. So we need to deal with the white space characters, and that is the purpose of lines 90 through 93, where we individually test for the new line escape sequence, which is going to be inserted into the input stream when the user presses enter. We test for the tab escape sequence, which is inserted into the new input stream if the user hits the tab key, and we test for the space inputs or character, which indicates that the user hit the space key while doing their input. And in all 3 of those cases, the only thing we want to do is terminate the switch statement and move on to the next iteration of the while loop, where we can then test to see if the grade that was entered is equal to the end of file sequence or not. And once we get through summing up all those grades, we then reach the end of our function input grades, which brings us back to line 12 in the program. We then move to the display grade report member function. Now, one feature that's nice in the IDE is if you want to jump to a particular member function's definition, you can right-click a member function call and say go to definition, and it will take you right to the definition of that member function. So here we have the display grade report function, and all it's going to do is output the counts of all the different letter grades on individual lines. So we output the A colon space, and then the A count, B colon space, and the B count, etc.